Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Dark Matter as well as the latest episode of Wynonna Earp. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Dark Matter, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Wynonna Earp. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Dark Matter. A very, very good episode with some very interesting developments. Obviously, the main focus of this episode is kind of almost like putting like Adrian at the forefront. Make sure to remember his name this time. It's focusing on his story of like, kind of getting caught up with this whole Tabor situation. Kind of a little bit like, for him, it's like, oh man, I served Tabor for like 5 years, but the douchebag never really treated me well. You know, and obviously this all gets even more complicated when it's like, he's like, I'm gonna check in on this particular area because this is a place that, Tabor might have bunkered down at. When in actuality, it's where his girlfriend, Ambrosia, was. And so that was Adrian's main motive behind it, which I love the fact this three is like, Tabor's kind of out of the situation now, but it's like, so if you go in sweeping her knight in shining armor, she would probably be, more likely to kind of, fall for you and everything and be yours. At first he's kind of like, no, it's not even like that, but it's like, but then he's like, but do you really think that might be the case? And you have Five being like, really? He's like, what? No, sure, just a good friend. It's like, whatever, dude. You've already shown your cards. We know where your motives are. Because I love what they're doing with Adrian's character because they're making him a less sleazy Tabor. Because it's like obviously he's got his faults and everything, and obviously the team has their reservations about trusting him and everything. But in this episode, he came through because when the time came for it, like he could have sold them out, but it's like because even the guy that was like the guy that was like, oh yeah, like Tabor would have sold them out by now. It's like, yeah, but I'm not Tabor. Which is like, yeah, you have a lot more merit to him. I mean, the instances we've come across Tabor so far in the series, it's just kind of like, it's kind of a douchebag. And there was that one situation where he possibly set them up. He swears he didn't, but I mean, who's really to say? He's a very slimy dude, and you never really 100%. His allegiance is only to himself, only what he can get out of it. And maybe Adrian is like that. I mean, he spent enough time around Tabor, but I feel like in this episode, he kind of showed his true colors. I mean, granted, that could be him just trying to gain favoritism from the Raza crew, because it's like, I did this and that. I did love that whole conversation with Five, though, when he's like, okay, so I know how we get out of here. And they say it at the same time, like, play sick. One of us play sick. Yeah. And she's like, no, that's not going to work. It's like, okay. So how about, you hack out of here. Okay. So I'll try and hack us out of here. He's like, so you want me to try and do that when I don't have my tools and everything? He's like, I'm coming up with the plans. I can't come up with the plans and execute it. Come on, you got to do your part here too. She's like, okay, so what do you want to do after we somehow manage to get out of here, even though I don't have my tools for hacking? He's like, well, we run for the Marauder as fast as we can. It's just like, I love you, dude. I love you. I actually felt so bad for him when it was all said and done with this whole Ambrosia situation. I had a feeling she was going to betray him. The moment the words came, I just felt like that was going to be where the twist was going to come from. But at the same time, it's like, oh, of course. The moment she opened her mouth and was like, what took you so long? Rather than being like, oh, thank you for coming to save me. It's like the moment she's like, what took you so long? It's like, you were impatient. You were waiting for this thing. Because it's like the way he made it sound like Gorn wasn't the type of person. Like, he was kind of a rival of business rival of Tabor's, but he never really would have done something like this, and it kind of makes sense why he wouldn't have done something. Doesn't seem like he was necessarily the smartest person either, so it's like, take a little bit of wit and intellect behind this situation to make sense why Ambrosia was behind it. And it felt so bad because she's kind of the main reason why he was doing all of this, because he actually cared for her, but the fact that she was with Tabor, but Tabor never really treated her right and everything. She ended up killing Gorn, and she's like, I've been biding my time for Tabor, Adrian, you, and, Gorn. Like, I've been using all three of you for the purposes of, basically she wants to do her own business. She wants to take what Tabor was doing and basically what Adrian is doing and just basically start her own business. Do big deals and then kind of run off. Because this is all about a file that was stolen from Ferris Corp by, Tabor, basically about a new bunch of fleet of ships being made. There's some Mike whispers about it that that 2 had found out about from Truffaut. Immediately, 3's mind is like, we can sell these. But for 2, I think like a lot of stuff that 6 has said has shifted her mind, because she's the first one to be like, no, this could change the tide of the wars. And it's like, huh. It seems like what Six had said, you kind of made it seem like you didn't want to get involved. But I think after everything that you've gone through, after talking to Six and see where he stands in the whole situation, I guess like it's changed her mind about it. She wants to do the right thing. She wants to do good because she knows like what this means. Like, Three still wants to play the odd game, like, oh, he isn't a good guy. He's still playing the bad guy card just because, I mean, I guess for him it's just like, it's a role I've been dealt. Why not play it through to the end? But I mean, when the time comes, he comes through as a good guy. He's proven that on multiple occasions. And so I feel like, you know, I don't know, it's just kind of an interesting thing to me that Two is the one that kind of suggested that. And I guess she has to be the one to do it now that Six isn't around to suggest that for them. So I guess she's kind of playing that role now too. So I think that's something we will see going forward now that it kind of just, even just that small thing kind of shows where Two's mind is going forward with this whole situation. I mean, she isn't dead, Ambrosia, so we're probably going to come across her in the future. I mean, I love that whole lie, like, after, like, she's starting to run away and everything, and then you have Adrian be like, no, 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 don't kill her, and everyone's just kind of like, okay, he's running after her and everything. And she gets knocked out by Solara, and Solara's like, got the gun. It's like, no, 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 don't kill her. It's like, and she's begging. She's like, oh my God, Adrian, I've been just so confused and everything. It's just because I spent so much time with them. It's like you literally just went on a huge monologue about how much you've been using him, how he's an idiot for ever thinking there would ever be anything between the two of you, and you're up here trying to play that. And it almost seems like it's even working. Solara has to slap him like, yo. And he's like, give me the necklace. She's like, what are you talking about? It's like, I know that necklace must be the decipher for this fire. She's like, what? It was given to me. It was a gift from Truffaut's aunt. It's like, he doesn't have an aunt, Miriam. It's like, oh, well, so what? I got her name wrong. It's like, he doesn't have an aunt. She's like, his grandmother? It's like, dude. Because, I mean, I guess that shows you, too, just how dedicated Adrian was, because the fact is he knew more about Truffaut than she did, that he could immediately see through her BS, that she couldn't come up with enough of a convincing lie to fool him. So I guess that showed you how dedicated he was to his job in those, like, 5 years. He did describe Truffaut as kind of like a deadbeat dad. Which is so sad that, you know, Adrian kind of had to walk away from this heartbroken. Well, like I said, she isn't dead, so I doubt we've seen the last of her, or heard the last of her. I mean, especially being very ambitious like she is, you know. But at the same time, it's like ambition does have the tendency of kind of screwing you over. So who's to say that when it's all said and done, it won't come back to bite her in the ass. But I mean, we would just not know the way to see on that front. I brought her up earlier, Solara. We interestingly enough found out more about her past, finding out she was part of a monastery and stuff like that, took a vow not to kill. She knows martial arts and stuff because they trained her. It's mainly for self-defense, but you're never meant to take a life. But that changed because some bandits came, killed the people she cares about. But she proceeded to kill them too, you know, because all the people that she cared about that trained her and, like, raised her were gone, so she got her revenge, but she left the monastery behind because it's like her vow and everything, because it's like she can't go back because she already broke her vow and ended up killing the bad people. So I was like, oh, maybe they're setting Adrian up to be the new Six in the group, you know, him and Five bonding. It seems like they might be setting it up for Solara and Five. And an interesting thing, too, is she brought up the fact is that Four actually trained her. I was like, I don't think that actually happened on screen that she ever trained. Because the only people we ever saw train, especially last season, was Four and Nyx. So not unless it was something that popped up, you know, here and there in season 1. I feel like it probably had to be something season 2, because that's when the group kind of gave Five a lot more freedom, and like, you know, obviously Six always had his reservations, but you know, Five kind of stepped up and everyone's like, nah, Five can do this. She's just as much of part of this crew as anyone else. So, but it was Four that kind of trained her a little bit, and we saw a little bit of it. So she just, I guess, haven't had a real opportunity to really implement it yet. She's about probably still in the training processes and everything. So, but that's just kind of interesting learning a little bit more about Solara like that. Because it also seems like she's kind of interested in filling the roles of both Nyx as well as Four to a certain degree. So another interesting thing too is in this episode is obviously the android had to go all putting in her upgrade and using her upgrade and everything, and it's flirting with that guard and everything. It's just like, dude, is she putting on kind of that Southern Belle type of accent? And I'm like, wow, It's always trippy because you're so used to her kind of just being very robotic, and then when you see her kind of, I mean, I think that's why Zoe Palmer does such a fantastic job with this role, because the fact that she's very robotic at times, but even when she's robotic, you feel that human soul to it. But then you see it even more so when you see her kind of just being a human and everything. It catches you off guard, and it seems like there's moments where at least three feeling uncomfortable because he's around her and he'll see her acting human, looking pretty and stuff like that. And I think it catches him off guard because like, I thought you said you weren't going to dress like that. You know, you're going to keep the human stuff to like off the ship. That moment you get back, you're going back to being the android and everything. It does seem like it catches him off guard and makes him uncomfortable because I think on some level he's like attracted to her, but he has a constant reminder. It's like, no, she's a robot. Then again, it's like, well, there's a whole Sarah situation. I mean, which is probably another layer to it, but it's like she's now a program, and it's like, is that so? It's like, would that be any different? Because I mean, like over time, like 3 easily gained a soft spot for the android because it's like, oh yeah, don't restart your memory because I want you to stay the way you are. I mean, it's like all the time and effort we put into you being the way I definitely can't do that all over again. You're fine the way you are, android. I'm not about to dedicate all this time trying to break in a new android. The new android that you would be the moment you wipe your memories and personality and stuff like that. So it's just kind of an interesting thing that I can't help but picking up just like how awkward and weird he acts around her when she's like that. I did appreciate that conversation she was having with that security robot, being like, "Oh yeah, here's the choice. You can make it for yourself." I mean, 3 got impatient, but it's like, "Oh, don't worry. When he wakes up, he can decide for himself." I didn't know she had more than one. Did she copy it, or did she get in contact with Victor or something? Or is it a situation once like the upgrade has been added to your system? Like, is it kind of like a disk drive type of situation where it's like the moment you put it in, you can take it back out and anyone can use it? The fact that she left it with, so it seems like it might be a permanent upgrade situation. Like it's already part of her programming, so she doesn't need that specifically to activate it because it's already been activated on her. So maybe we'll be seeing that security robot again soon. Maybe he'll be full, well, human-esque. The question is also like, what does that mean? Like, because obviously he was waiting for Tabor. He's like, I haven't talked to Tabor in like 3 months and blah 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 amount of time. So it's like, does beg the question, where is Tabor? Like, is he even still alive? Like I said, he's too much of a weasel, too scummy, I feel like, to be dead. I'm sure he's found a way to weasel his way around the galaxy or whatever. So. But that does bring up an interesting thing, and it's something that last episode has already sparked. It's like every time something goes down, your brain immediately goes, "Could this be some of the stuff that Five from the future was talking about?" Like for one, like we saw from the android's future that she gets caught up in like an android revolution and stuff like that, and it seems like we're seeing the beginning parts of that. Like the fact that she's asking other androids to make that choice of whether they want to upgrade, whether they want to be more or not. Whether it's like, oh, you'll be waiting here forever to serve a person that may or may not come back, who doesn't care about you, who just looks at you as nothing more than a tool or a utensil. So it's like, make a choice, get your own free will type of thing. But because at the very least, it seems like that might be that direction that might be taken. I don't know. Kind of coinciding with that is the Rio side of the story in this episode, where it's like, oh yeah, like Rio's kind of caught between two people, between Teku and Misaki, both wanting him to lead in very different ways. Obviously, there's an attack. One of his generals dies. Like the army that was being led by the general kind of scatters a little bit, so he's kind of off kilter. The other armies kind of like left this place, like, they'll conquer it if Ashita doesn't do anything, but it's like it's a sacred place, but it has no strategic value, which is why Rio's kind of like, I don't think I should do it. Teku's like, do it. Misaki's like, you can do it, but wait till later on, wait till an opportune time. Like, you got to lead with an iron fist, while Teku is like, no, you got to do this because it will be a symbol to the people. It's like, oh, he cares about tradition. He cares about us. It's like, fear is a good motivator, sure, but love is an even bigger one. It's like, you do this, people will love you, they will adore you, and they will fully like follow you to death type of thing. And it's actually kind of interesting when you break it down. The fact is he has to deal with Misaki and Teku, both representing like the dual sides of Rio. Misaki talks to the Rio side of him, whereas Teku kind of appeals to the Force side of him, the side of him that's more like, kind of leads a little more logically and stuff like that, a little more with heart. Like, not to the point of being full-heartedly like, oh, always lead with your heart, but also like a little bit of that human nature to it, whereas like Rio, and Misaki kind of lead like, take blade in hand, cut down any who's standing your way, any to send whatever message you have to send, kind of like being very brutal. And obviously he went with Teku's side of things this episode, but obviously struggling with it, but he went with Teku's side of things. And that led to them falling into a trap, losing even more people and stuff like that. So now he's not going to listen to Teku anymore. I mean, this on top of the fact is there was an assassination attempt against him. So once again, like I said, going the more brutal route to handle those particular situations. But the point I was leading to earlier was the fact is that I was like, immediately my brain was like, okay, we know that the Ishidas fall. So what's going to happen is whoever he chooses not to listen to whoever he will choose to listen to will ultimately be the downfall of the Ishidas in some shape or form. Like in Teku's case, like I was like, okay, so if he chooses to listen to Teku, which he did, things didn't work out. But now because of that, he's going to be more brutal. The fact of the matter is, if he was the leader Teku thinks and wants him to be, then maybe things would work out. But the fact is that he is going to be who Masaki believes him to be. Because the thing is, Teku's also talking about the fact is, Masaki, you're only talking from this perspective. You've only known this world. You've only known to be this one way, to be a hardened warrior, not being able to see more beyond your own eyes. With your blade in hand, that is all you see. When Teku seems to have a much broader horizon at the very least, or see things from a different perspective. And it seems like that's something he's trying to get Rio to do, but now he did, but it seems like because things didn't work out that one time, it seems like Rio won't be listening to him again. He'll most likely take more of Masaki's counsel. Because I think a big reason why he took Teku's, advice more so than Masaki's is mainly because obviously, like I said, the duality of Rio as well as 4. But I think also because the fact is that he's still pissed at Masaki for the whole killing Nyx thing, which she still's like, no, that was the right move. Once again, I feel like the Rio side of him is agreeing, but the 4 side of him who loved her doesn't I think, and I really believe that will be something that 4 will have to heavily struggle with this season, being the fact of the matter is that having to face those dual sides of himself, like I say, it seems like he gives into some more so than others. Obviously, a lot of last season, we saw a lot more of Rio than I feel like we saw of 4, but we saw remnants of 4 here and there with certain aspects and certain conversations he's had and stuff like that. The fact is that he's upset about Nyx like that. I mean, granted, I don't know. We didn't really get to know much of who he was before he was 4. Well, knew him before as, Rio, so who knows how? I mean, his situations made him very hardened. His betrayal, being brandished a traitor, being hunted, all that. But even then, 4 was not a softie himself. 4 did a lot of things you were like, oh, could you really have done that? So there was a little bit of Rio inside of 4, but still, I don't know. I still feel like that duality still plays a part in it, but plus the Nyx thing too, so I do feel like ultimately going down this path is kind of setting him up to be like, yep, it's all going to come crumbling down. And then another thing that I was kind of thinking about, because obviously the assassination attempt that was on him is a guy that was basically a classmate of his brothers and stuff like that. Immediately, my brain goes, I think Masaki's behind this. I think she might have hired him just to prove the point of just to make Rio be more on her side, to be like, oh no, I'm always by your side, Emperor. I always look out for the best. I'm not going to go as far as saying oh yeah, the whole trap was her too. Not unless she is some traitor where she feels like Rio doesn't really deserve. I don't know. It's really hard to say. I mean, maybe something happened while she was gone. Maybe she changed her mind. I don't know. Misaki seems very loyal, so I don't think that's possible. But it would, Misaki has shown that she will do whatever it takes to make Rio the leader that she believes he needs to be, that Zyron needs him to be. So what's one set-up assassination attempt, if it means making him to be the leader he needs and to make the decisions he needs to make, so at least that's what I'm thinking. I mean, maybe when we get, next episode might prove that, hey, he actually has nothing to do with this. I mean, that Misaki has absolutely nothing to do with this. Maybe she does. We'll just kind of have to wait and see on that front. There's also the part of my brain is maybe Teku's behind it, but I was I don't think so. It might be a situation where Misaki might try to take advantage of it and make it seem like it's Teku just to kind of get him removed. It's the last thing I need is you even attempting to whisper in the Emperor's ears again and kind of shifting him away from the route he should be taking, so. The final notes that the episode left us off with is those Ferris Corp ships that the whole like Ferris Corp like file was about. Seems like they're gone. So it's like, why are they gone? They're not supposed to have been done for at least a month. So what's that about? There's the whole situation with that little moment between 5 and 6 I thought was kind of sweet because the fact that she still misses him and it's like, oh yeah, we can hang out and everything because time is coming, there's going to be some free time coming up soon. So I'm like, oh, that's sweet. So he's like, oh, you want to hang out? Then she's like, yeah, sure. So there's that. But then you got Neiman talking about the fact of the matter is obviously this war isn't Ferris Corp's baby. It's someone else's baby trying to do something. Like it's all part of some bigger plan. Someone's at the top and he's talking about like things aren't going the way he wants them to because it's like, oh yeah, like things have kind of escalated to the point where they're going to have to escalate their own plans, with this whole war and everything. And so it's like, oh, let's bring in Agent Zero. And like they show on the screen a picture of 6. So meaning either he is Agent Zero, maybe that's some like deep cover thing, or maybe like in actuality he's like a target. I mean, it could be either or. Hopefully we find out next episode what that was all about. I mean, he is kind of like the head of a colony right now, especially because colonies are trying to do the whole independence thing right now. So any that aren't under Ferris Corp is like, nope, we're going to take them down and stuff like that. I'm very curious to find out like who is like behind this whole situation. Because an interesting thing is we haven't ever seen the real top dogs at each side. I mean, Mickey, we've seen obviously Truffaut being constant force, and obviously Neiman for Ferris Corp. But at like take something like the Galactic Authority, we've never actually seen who is at the top of the Galactic Authority. That's an example of something. So maybe I'm kind of thinking in the back of my mind, what if it's someone at the top of the Galactic Authority with that whole situation? I mean, just random conjecture. I feel like it's got to be someone that we're familiar with. I mean, maybe, in all honesty, this might actually have to do with whoever, because that's still a story element that hasn't come up. Who's the person from the other world that came over to this one? Maybe that person got in contact with Ferris Corp and this whole war happened because it's like, oh, this is how it had worked out in my parallel universe. This is how it should work out in yours. So maybe it's a face we're familiar with. I kept always saying, like, I get the feeling like it might be Jace, but it might not be. Because I feel like the actor who plays him, I feel like this would be an opportunity to bring him back and just alternate reality him or whatever, I mean, again, like I said, all conjecture and just kind of throwing it out there. So, like I said, a very good episode, some very interesting developments. Like I said, going forward, because of the whole like knowing the future type of thing, with certain aspects with with the android and like knowing that the fall of Yoshida will come. And it does seem like it's not a situation of like, oh, these things will change. It's like, no, these things will happen. Because the android doesn't know to warn them about it and everything. So it's definitely going to be interesting going forward because you're going to be constantly like, oh, is this something? What is that? What this means? Is that what this means? Like what it all means in the long run. Hopefully we'll get answers to that, as we continue on with the next episode as well as the rest of the season. And now moving on to this week's episode of Wynonna Earp, a very, very good episode with a lot of different developments. Obviously, with like 2 different storylines going off. One about healing Dolls and curing him, while the other side is dealing with this case that Lakato is dealing with. It's like, oh yeah, there's this black bag suitcase that was stolen and everything. Waverly's volunteering to go undercover and stuff like that. A big part of this episode is also like Wynonna like slowly seeing like, okay, something is definitely wrong with Waverly. I got pissed at Nicole and stuff last episode. Just kind of it was his own thing that was kind of dealt with. But now it's like, okay, Nicole, you're right. Something's wrong with Waverly. I'm finally seeing it now. And then Nicole's like, yeah, all this like missing like silverware around the kitchen at the department is missing. And then like Wynonna pulls out a knife and she's like, oh, it was actually Waverly who took it. And then because an interesting thing too is that earlier on Waverly ended up picking up the like Dolls' tags and took them, once again kind of shiny stuff, so whatever this thing is, it like shiny stuff, and she puts it in her pocket. But the thing is, she shifted back into Waverly, but I guess in her mind like she was just kind of going on like auto drive, going on auto, because she just put it in her pocket. I guess she didn't really give it much thought. Like maybe something in her subconscious like, yeah, put it away, we'll kind of stockpile that for later. That like, it's not like it was active actively trying to hide it from Winona. It's just affecting the matter. It's like, oh, it likes hiding away the things it likes, these shiny things, because it's collected a whole bunch of it, hence all the silverware taken and all the shiny stuff it's taken before. So we're still not anywhere close to finding out exactly what this thing is. We are learning bits and pieces about it. Like, for one, obviously, as I've mentioned, it's a bit of a kleptomaniac. It's super strong. It's kind of a wild card because the fact is it's just all about playing, wanting to play and have fun. And it seems like, I guess that's why it's still shiny things. But, I mean, at the end of the day, that might also be what this is all about. Maybe it's actually a baby. Like, that's kind of the thing. Like, babies supposedly, like shiny things and stuff like that. I mean, maybe I mean, what do I really know about babies? But maybe that's what this is. Maybe this is some kind of like powerful baby demon that's like, oh yeah, like let's have fun. I just want to play. But also we found out it can also regenerate too, because Waverly ended up getting her hand chopped off and then it grew back, and then like Winona's like, no, you got your hand chopped off. I was like, well, I don't know. Like Waverly's, I looked away and stuff like that, which is like, yeah, it's like. So, I mean, there's so many levels to this thing. Like, before I was like, maybe this thing has had something, like, connected to the Seven Sins. I'm kind of taking that back. Like, that was just kind of a thought I had last episode. But now it just seems like, now I'm kind of pushing, maybe it's a baby demon element. Like, it is definitely connected to that thing that was trying to come through at the end of season 1, because because the thing is too, Waverly ended up telling this to Winona, like, hey, even she's like, okay, something's going on, I'm sleepwalking and losing time and stuff like that. The fact of the matter is, even the fact is that you walked in, there was a dead guy near me, you had to ask the question, did I do it? It's like, prior to this, you would have never asked me a question like that, so that must mean that you're thinking the same thing too. It does beg the question too, like another thing I'm kind of thinking about going forward with this episode too, is like, what does this mean for like them with Lucado? Because obviously they had a falling out with Lucado this episode, because it's like, like Winona got super pissed because it's like, you put my sister in danger. You're saying that like, oh, you're going to get backup, a lot of like real backup. And it's like, no, you didn't get backup. The only backup she had was you, and you did nothing. You just sat in the car. I mean, Winona did hit her pretty hard. It's like, if my sister is her, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna put two between your eyes, basically. That's the last time I want to see Lucado of the episode. So either she's probably on the run, kind of, just because it's like she has nowhere to go. She can't work with them, especially after she screwed up big time like that. Just on the off chance that Waverly did die, it's like she's gonna put distance between her and Winona, because if something happens to her, like in her current position, like Black Badge wouldn't do anything about it. It's like, well, you're both kind of in our employment. You're kind of on our like low tier list, so it's like if something happens to Kato at this point, like no one's going to bat an eye, especially Moody's just like, oh well. I mean, he might be like, oh, you killed one of our agents, but at the same time it's like, well, she screwed up so much, and it's like, you did us a favor, because we would have, continuing to mess up like she did, we'd probably kill her anyway. Maybe that's extra reason why she'd run away. But at the same time, it's like, because no one's listening to her back at Black Badge, because she does not hold the position that she held before, so that's why she doesn't have the backup. So like, this was kind of her moment to shine and be like, oh, look what I did. This has kind of put her back, and have some kind of standing, because this would have been her ticket out of purgatory or whatever. So like I said, that was the last time we saw her, especially with the whole Dolls returning situation. So it seems like obviously he's going to take over, and this is more so going to be his operation. It's definitely going to be interesting. I think they're probably going to have to fake it and make it seem like Lucado's still around. I mean, granted, she might actually still be around, but I mean, we'll just have to wait till the next episode to see. Especially in this episode, obviously, because Jeremy kind of gets a little closer to the group. Interesting enough, find out that Jeremy's actually gay. Because, like, it seems like Rosita's kind of hitting on him. It's like, I guess she's, like, wanting to ask him. She says it's, oh, because I want you to kind of go get, like, drinks and stuff like that. He's like, oh, okay. But he was like, oh, I don't want Dolls to kind of get the wrong idea. It's like, yeah, you're a very pretty woman, but, you're not my type. And it's like, I was like, oh, so that's what the whole thing about Doc was. It's not just you fanboying. It's because you're like, he's a handsome dude. It's like, oh, okay. I don't know. I didn't read that at all. But then again, I guess that's kind of, now I'm thinking about in retrospect, that's why the whole Waverly thing, it didn't even click in my head back then. That's why he wasn't even interested when Waverly was kind of going all undercover and everything, and was, trying to do what she was doing, her quote-unquote fake accent and everything. It's like, oh, that's why he wasn't really paying her much attention. He also brought up something interesting in his episode, being like, oh yeah, the fact is he wants to help out with Dolls. It's because, like, oh, Dolls helped him do a chin up one time. Also, it's like, Dolls is the only one that had some information about my mom. That seemed like such an important detail that it seemed like they just skated over that. It's like they just threw it. So it's like, is it something like you don't know much about your mom, but Dolls kind of being I mean, who knows where he was in the ranking of like black badge agents. It doesn't seem like he was top tier or anything like that. Obviously, like, I mean, no matter what position you're in, you're going to have a boss, but he had a boss like Lakato, and even Lakato is kind of bottom of the food chain. I mean, not even just now, beforehand she was too. At least I assume, but, but is it that as a black badge agent, as an actual, like, go out and do stuff agent, like he's able to get access to certain files, or like, what is that about? Like, or is it that he's connected to Jeremy's past or something? Really have no idea in that department. And also an interesting thing about this episode too is we found out a little bit more about what Dolls is. I would assume, like, we see his skin's kind of cracking when like they give him the medicine. It seems like the medicine didn't cure him, but it does seem like it's not like an absolute cure. Maybe eventually, given enough time, it can be. But for right now, it's a situation of like, hey, with Jeremy's help, they kind of gave him a cure that kind of acts as kind of like the medicine he was taking before. We actually see him kind of go a little full blown, like I said, the cracked skin on his forehead, and he ends up breathing fire on one of the demons. And then, like, you even have, I don't know, being like, going all, like, even uses the word dragon. I'm like, wait, is that what he is? Is he some kind of dragon demon? I mean, demons, hellfire, I feel like it kind of goes hand in hand, but it's a breathing fire like that. And I like it's kind of cool too. He's like, even he was kind of like, dude, almost like, did you see that? That was sick. He's like, could you get me some water, dog? My throat's hot. So, what I also appreciate is the fact is it's just him and Doc bonding. They hated each other season 1, but now it's like, yo, look at you, fun, managed to come back and everything. It's just the conversation, them like giving each other like a handshake and everything. It's like, I don't know, they have formed a bond, and it's just kind of, like I said, it's interesting to see that, like, it's there. I mean, especially after everything Doc has done. He says it wasn't for Dolls, which, yes, it was mostly for Winona, but I think it's also because Dolls has kind of wormed his way into Doc's heart, much like Doc has wormed his way into Dolls' heart. So it's like, budding bromance. Yeah. But he did bring up something interesting. Dolls did say, like, oh, yeah, he got back to town because of a certain guy, and Doc's like, it was this guy called Juan Carlo. It's like, yeah. So, still part of this big picture. Once again, still don't know what he is. I'm assuming because he talks about like, oh, we're watching. This seems like might be some like we're ancient beings, whether it's gods, creatures, whatever the case may be. We're something that's ancient and old, and we've been around for a while. We're very concerned about this whole ghost triangle situation. It seems like obviously they know a lot more than they're letting on, because even Doc's like, yeah, I'm tired of the bastard always showing up just talking in riddles and everything. It's kind of annoying. So it seems like they know what's going on, but it's a situation of like, whatever the case may be, it seems like they can't outright interfere. It's a situation that he's leaving it up to the others because only they can act. They're kind of maybe prohibited from acting or something. Maybe there's some like cosmic guidelines that prevent them from doing what they need to do or want to do. Or maybe Juan Carlos actually neck deep in all of this, and in the sense of like, oh, he's secretly a bad guy, and that he's just pretending to be a good guy because he needs all the pawns and players on the chessboard all lined up in their particular positions to, I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm sure he's I won't even say good. I want to say good guy. I mean, but it's at the very least a very neutral party at the very least. But it does seem like more so he is a good guy trying to keep everything within a ghost triangle sealed up and keeping everything just kind of in check. I guess keeping the balance of things. So. And what I also appreciated about this episode too was a continuation of the Gardner family story, where like I saw Mercedes. I was like, oh wait, is she alive? I was like, wait, did that thing possess her? And then it's like, oh, where's Beth? Tucker's asking, oh, where's Beth? I was like, oh, she's getting her face on. I was like, do you? So wait, is it like, do you wear people's skin? Is that what these things do? And then it's like, you hear screaming and stuff like that. And it's like later on, Tucker comes back and he sees, it's like his sister's bodies are there, but their faces are gone. So these things literally wear their faces. It doesn't seem like just their skin, but just in particular their faces. And I guess the rest of their bodies kind of just mold to fit that face. So, because at the very least, we do know there are 2 of those things. The question is, I'm kind of wondering is, I think I might have brought this up last episode, maybe I didn't, but maybe it's something specifically tied to the Gardner family because they chose him specifically. And the fact of the matter is, they're like, oh, there's something inside of Tucker. Like this might be a situation of like, oh, they need a perfect host, and either it's like a Gardner family situation of like, oh, the Gardner family always has like some kind of gene or some curse upon their family that makes them eligible for this curse or whatever. I mean, because it seems like whatever was sealed in that the things that are impersonating his sisters seem to have been a part of that. So maybe it's about making Tucker into the perfect vessel that can inhabit whatever the hell came out of that crack, whatever out of that seal. It seems like that might be like the most logical answer at this point in time. Because they're talking about nurturing the darkness within them. So that sounds like oh yeah, you will be, oh, we're setting you up to be the perfect vessel type of situation. So we'll just kind of have to see in that department. But at this point in time, they're trying to like, I guess, giving, like, obviously, you know, he kind of has a little bit of a twisted heart because of his, like, twisted desires and stuff like that. And it seems like they are trying to feed that. They're like, oh, what do you want? And he's like, I want a girl. So it's like, is that what that whole Nicole or like Waverly situation is about? Because he wants one of them or something like that. I don't know. Maybe that's why he harps on Nicole and Waverly so much, like, oh, last time being like, oh, that's so disgusting. Maybe that's because for him, he's just like, why do you get a girl and like me being who I am can't get one? It's like, well, maybe it's just because you're a weirdo. I mean, you gotta admit, he kind of is a weirdo. It's hard to say where he stands on this because he's like, oh yeah, talking to Nicole and everything. He's like, oh no, almost kind of threatening, like, oh, it'd be kind of bad if the town found out about what she did to me. It's like, oh, you shouldn't treat me like I'm a bad guy because I'm not one, which is like, it seems like they might be setting you up to be a bad guy. So it's kind of like a situation of like, it seems like he hates other people because people judge him, but it's like the way you act and do things. Maybe it's a situation of he can't actually control it. Maybe there is a sort of innate darkness in him that makes him act upon things. And so it's just kind of like, oh, you're acting like this. You're kind of an outcast. People don't like you and stuff like that because they subconsciously feel that something's off about you. And that's just, maybe that's kind of his whole thing. You know, maybe it's like a generation thing. Maybe it happens only to the males in the Gardner family. Maybe it just happened to be Tucker's turn in this generation, in this particular generation of the Gardner family. I don't know. I do hope that maybe like, because I was actually scared. I was like, oh man, that sucks that Mercedes is dead. It's like, no, her and Beth are alive. They're just without their faces, so there's not even a chance of like somebody finding them because Tucker knows that's not his sisters, but he's happy because I was like, oh, this new arrangement kind of works out for me. You'll do whatever I want you to, type of thing. So, and that same question kind of apply. I originally was thinking about that thing inside of Waverly. I was like, okay, so does the same thing apply? Whereas these days kind of go after the Gardner family specifically. Could that be what their thing is? Could this thing inside of Waverly have gone after her because of her not being an herb? Could it be whoever family she's originally from? I mean, hell, for all we know, she might actually be a Gardner, for all we know. That might end up being the twist that, like, oh yeah, she's actually a Gardner. Still haven't brought that conversation up to Winona yet, but it was kind of like, that's what my mind was originally, but it seems like, no, it went into Waverly because it's just, I guess Waverly was closest by, because Waverly had talked about the pool of goo being like, oh yeah, come closer, so it called out to her. Hey, it's why I would think like, oh yeah, it has to be something to do with your family, but it's like, no, it doesn't even want to be in Waverly's body because she's no fun. But it's like, if I had to pick someone, why not pick Winona? You're the most fun and everything. So it ends up possessing Winona at the end of the episode. Obviously now Winona's this demon, she can't use the Peacemaker anymore, which then kind of goes, holy crap, who's left to use it? Because Waverly can't use it because she's not an herb. So, and just when Dolls kind of finally gets back, now we have Winona being possessed by a demon. I mean, I guess now you can also be like, oh, they both got something in common now. They're both now to the point where it's like, yeah, we're both something else. So, I'm also curious to see, because it seemed like they might be setting up also kind of just throwing it in there, like the whole Rosita and Doc thing, just because it's like, oh, they're laughing and having fun and everything. Like, we still don't really know much about Rosita, so it's like, now that the whole cure situation, I mean, like I said, that's probably still going to be a continuous thing, so she's going to have to be around to help with that. And obviously, Jeremy's kind of gotten more acquainted and become part of the team and everything, so he's going to be helping out with that as well. And I'm kind of curious too. Has Black Badge not realized that the things that got out are gone? Like, have they not realized that? Like, I feel like there's some sensors or something that had to have gone off. Maybe they don't know exactly where they've gone to yet. Maybe they're slowly tracking them back to purgatory. Maybe not. Also, side note that I kind of completely missed this. I should have brought it up earlier. Is mad props to Dominique, the actress who plays Waverly. She killed it this episode with that singing. That was like super amazing. I really like the song she was singing too, but it's like she really killed it and nailed it. And I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. I'm very curious to see like where things are going to take us now that, Winona's possessed by a demon and just everything else that, I've kind of brought up, everything that kind of went down in this episode. Like, I'm curious to see where it all kind of goes from here next episode, as well as for the rest of the season. Also, what about that whole plate situation with that suitcase? It's like, oh, this suitcase was so important, people were going to pay tremendous amounts of money just to get it. Why does, it seems like it's just a plate. So why is it so important that Black Badge had it and its other people are so willing to pay an arm and a leg for it? Maybe we'll find out soon enough. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.